I don't see where I have a record.
I got it now. It's on I believe it's on record. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
it says
Yep,
recording.
yep.
Okay. Yay.
Is there anyone else in the waiting room, Stacy, or is this it for now?
There's nobody else waiting.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. We'll go ahead and get started. So this is the fall webinar series for the National Agricultural Producers Data Cooperative. Just as a reminder of what the organization is, it's really the goal of the organization is to develop a blueprint for a national data framework and cooperative where producers, universities, and not-for-profit entities can store and share data and develop powerful tools that enable producers to maximize their production and profitability. So we're fortunate today to be joined by Jennifer Swanson and Thad, who are going to show us a new Producer Connect, as well as probably talk a little bit about the NRDs in the system, as well as groundwater nitrate concerns, and thinking about future efficient irrigation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer and Thad.
All right, thank you. I'm Jennifer Swanson. I'm with the Nebraska Association of Resources Districts, and me and Thad Kuntz with Adaptive Resources, Inc. and Longitude 103 will kind of be tackling this webinar today. And we're going to be sharing with you the dashboard that we've been working on the last year called Producer Connect, and the kind of innovative approach that the NRDs have taken to address the nitrate challenge across the state. So with that, I'll actually kick it off, and then Thad will provide us a demonstration of the dashboard a little bit later, but I'll take about 10 to 15 minutes to kind of just give a brief overview of kind of how we got to where we are with the development of Producer Connect. So with that, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the development of the NRDs for those that aren't familiar with our NRD system here in Nebraska, the importance of water management in Nebraska, the challenges that we kind of face statewide with nitrate pollution, and then the innovative solutions that we've been implementing to protect and to preserve our water resources. So as the NRDs, it's our goal to kind of understand the past, recognize the present challenges, and then explore future possibilities for sustainable water management across the state. With that, we are unique in that we are the only state that has natural resource districts. We have 23 NRDs that are formed by river basin boundaries. This allows us to approach natural resource management on a watershed basis. Other states have what's called conservation districts, and those are basically on a county by county basis. So this kind of gives us a unique approach in managing our natural resources. We were formed in 1972 as a local government entity to basically address natural resource concerns across the state. We'll look at the 12 different areas that we're responsible for here next, but of the forefront kind of that is managing groundwater. So we've been managing and monitoring groundwater for 50 years. And in order to protect and manage our groundwater, each district has developed groundwater management plans, groundwater rules and regulations. And these plans and rules and regulations have been developed and revised over the years based on the data that the NRDs have collected through their monitoring programs. So over the years, the responsibilities of the NRDs have evolved. Our initial focus was pretty broad. But now water management is really kind of at the forefront of what we do. And it's important in Nebraska because so much of what we do relies on water. So our 12 areas of responsibility, again, each NRD shares these 12 areas of responsibility. You can see the ones that are highlighted in green. Those are the ones related to water management. And
Oh,
so while-
Jennifer, I can't see the slides.
Oh, you can't.
No,
Is it like a complete blank
it's like,
screen?
I can see you. Nope, it's your camera. So it's you talking. We can't
I
see
can
the-
see, I can see her slides.
Yeah, I
You
can see him
can't.
okay, Jennifer.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, it's probably just me. Thanks. I'll,
Okay.
I'll poke around for a
Okay.
while. Sorry, false
That's
alarm.
okay. No, I'm glad. If you can't see something, please let me know and I'll stop. So we have these shared 12 responsibilities. 4 of them are really related to water management. And while each district shares these, they have the ability to kind of set their own priorities and develop programs at the local level to address local resource concerns. So with water being so essential to our state, it's really a big factor for us. It's essential for our agriculture, our industry, our communities. It's a primary drinking water source for many of the residents. So our state's prosperity really relies on our water. Approximately 85% of Nebraskans rely on groundwater as their drinking water resource. It's also our #1 source for irrigation, which is our #1, with agriculture being our #1 industry in the state. So with ag being our #1 industry in the state, we do have this growing challenge of nitrate pollution. And it's really our primary thing that we're trying to address as NRDs today. Over the last few decades, we've seen a significant intensification of ag practices here in the state. And while that has given us a boost in our ag economy, it's come at a cost for some of our natural resources, particularly our groundwater resource. The fertilizers and other ag inputs that are used have leached into our groundwater, causing these increased nitrate levels. With these increased nitrate levels also comes environmental and public health implications. So not only are they degrading our water quality and affecting both our surface and groundwater, the NRDs are primarily focused on protecting groundwater. While they do play a part in surface water, for the Producer Connect app, we're primarily focused on groundwater here. And so this contamination, it affects our health. It affects our vulnerable populations, our infants, pregnant women, our older populations over time, with blue baby syndrome, some cancers. So addressing this concern, it's not just about maintaining a clean water supply, but it's really about protecting the health and well-being of our citizens of the state. Oops, I went too far. Hold on just a second here. So this map is just to kind of put into context what we're dealing with, a visual context of what we're dealing with. This data is a little bit older and that's okay. But what I want you all to get from this is we can see that the pink and purple dots are kind of our areas of most concern. Those are our nitrate levels above the 10 parts per million of the drinking water standard. And while you can see some concentrated areas throughout the state, you can also see that it's not just isolated incidents. It's really a widespread issue that we're trying to address. With that, we can also see that our trend is increasing over time. And again, this is an older graph, but the context is still the same, is that we're seeing these increasing trends in nitrate concentration. We haven't seen them leveled off yet. We haven't seen them on a downward trend. And so we're using this data to make management decisions. And that's kind of where the NRDs come in then, and their role in addressing nitrate pollution. And so our current responsibilities include really monitoring our water resources, developing rules and regulations to address and protect the concerns that we're facing, and implementing education programs. So in order to mitigate the rising nitrate levels, we've employed a variety of strategies. We promote best management practices for for agriculture. We've enhanced our monitoring programs, and then we've developed targeted education programs for landowners. And this is just, it's a really complex issue that we're trying to address. And when we're dealing with complex issues, really collaboration and innovation is key. We just can't keep doing the same thing, hoping that eventually we're going to see results. And there's not going to be a one size fits all approach either. So we can't do it by ourselves. We kind of need everyone to join forces and do this together. And with that, innovation is key solution. That's kind of the road we've gone down to get to Producer Connect. So with our groundwater management plans and our rules and regulations, the districts have formed phase areas, and these phase areas are essentially the higher the nitrate in the groundwater, the higher the phase area and the more restrictions or regulations that are in place to address that resource concern. So in our phase 2 and higher areas, producers are required to submit an annual crop report form that kind of collects some vital data that we use to make some management decisions. The information that's submitted on these crop report forms is data that is used in Producer Connect. So Producer Connect is kind of helping us make this reporting easier and then providing them insights about the data that they're collecting on their operation. With that, this is an example of some of that data that has been collected on the crop report forms. This is from the Lower Niobrara NRD in their phase 2 areas. This represents just under 500,000 corn acres on the x-axis. You can see the pounds of nitrogen applied, and on the y-axis, you can see the bushels per acre. The red line down the middle, that is the UNL recommended nitrogen application rate. So what we can see on this graph is that we have a lot of producers out there applying over that UNL recommended rate. The other thing you can kind of notice is when you're looking at the dots and the yield, you're not really seeing a significant increase in the yield of that crop with the increase of the nitrogen applied. So there comes to be a point of basically a point of no return in economic viability there. You're not seeing a large significant increase when you see those higher yield or with the higher nitrogen application. So this is where Producer Connect comes in. Producer Connect was developed as a nitrogen and water use dashboard. So it takes the information from those crop report forms. It makes it easier for the producer to submit that information, and then it feeds that information back to the producer in an easy to digest manner. It provides them some graphs that they can look at, some recommendations of the level of nitrogen they should apply based on farm specific data. This was a collaborative effort among a number of NRDs, ag organizations, and technology partners that has gotten us to this point. So we've really taken a lot of areas of expertise and knowledge and pulled it all together with this tool. Our goal here is to empower those producers to make data-driven decisions on their operation. And we want them to do that in order to improve their irrigation and nitrogen management practices, but also to help with their profitability and sustainability in their operation. Some of the features of this, again, is farm-specific data integration. The producer is going to get a nitrogen recommendation for each field that they fill the information out for based on data specifically from their farm. It gives them a nitrogen use efficiency so they can see how efficient they are, and it also makes a comparison too, that we're still working the details of that out, but it compares them to other producers in the area so they can see kind of how they rank out to others. Another key feature that we wanted to make sure is that it was user-friendly. We want a producer to be able to submit this stuff easily, to be able to enjoy their experience on the platform, and this helps with the widespread adoption of it as well. So we've kind of put those things at the forefront of the development of this. The data is also very secure. We can't share the data with anyone. The districts don't share the data with anyone. The producers can't access anyone else's data except their own. So data security is very big on this as well. Some of the benefits is that optimum optimizing the nitrogen use efficiency to help reduce the over application and improve productivity on the producer's operation, reducing the environmental impacts and mitigating that nitrate leaching into groundwater, and supporting sustainable agricultural decisions, because we really want to enhance the long-term productivity of not just their operations, but our water and natural resources. For us, this is just kind of the start of this. We've got a good foundation built with this phase 1 development of Producer Connect. And so from here, we are really incorporating feedback and new ideas to make future enhancements of the dashboard. It continues with collaboration and partnership between NRDs and the producers and multiple stakeholders that have been a part of this project. So for us, it's been kind of a really full circle moment that's come together with the things that we've been doing and being able to kind of work with other organizations to help them help us and vice versa. So with that, I'm going to let Thad kind of take it away a little bit and give some more information on Producer Connect and provide that demo for us. Thad, are you able to share your screen by chance?
Yep, I think the screen button is green, so let me try that right quick. I'm Thad Kuntz. I'm owner of one of the owners of Longitude 103. We're a software development company. I'm also a principal hydrogeologist at Adaptive Resources Inc. So I deal with groundwater throughout the state. I work with NRDs everywhere in this state and others in other states of the United States as well. But my main work is Nebraska. I'm out of Scottsbluff, Nebraska. So I'm on the other side of the state from everybody else likely. And so just wanted to kind of show you this. Let me share my screen now so we can see. So it's going to end your share screen, Jennifer, just so you know. Share mine. Okay, can all the folks see my screen then? Okay, I'm seeing head shaking, yes. So, like Jennifer said, Producer Connect was developed to kind of really help producers understand multiple different things. Nitrate was one of the overarching goals of, or basically nitrogen application management, really one of the overall goals of this thing. But it really came out of work we've been doing for a while. I own a company that deals with the software, and we originally had this software called Hydrodata, which is our platform for natural resource districts or groundwater management districts to store and analyze their data, which I'm showing you guys now. And I'm talking about Hydrodata because it ties into the rest. Hydrodata is the database that stores all the data in the background. Producer Connect is the interface of this data to producers, crop consultants, owners, farm contacts, operators of farms, that kind of thing. So Hydrodata is kind of the background app that controls everything, stores all the data, has the databases. Producer Connect basically feeds off of the database that provides it for Hydrodata and Producer Connect at the same time. So Hydrodata is used by the districts themselves, and Producer Connect is used by the producers out there, landowners and whatnot, kind of thing. So just want to make sure everybody understands that. We'll talk a little about that because there's certain things you do in one and the other, but I'll go back into Producer Connect. So this, again, we wanted to create a system that would allow a producer to sign in. They can see their information that's stored in the NRD's data systems. They can understand things about water usage, anything information about wells, what lands they irrigate, and apply nitrogen to, flow meters, chemications out there, to understand kind of right now it's a read-only thing, but that'll change in the future, soil samples, crops management, and then eventually to kind of a nitrogen app management, nitrates understanding of their system. And so you would log into the system. The NRDs would have to send you an invite from Hydrodata. So basically there's an invite that would go out here where you'd send this little thing out here where if you had an email address in, it would go to your email address. It would say, hey, you're invited to Producer Connect. You signed up for that. You would see this page right here. And I'm showing you actually my own farm because I cannot share any of this data with any folks because of our user agreements are very, 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 very strict. And so we really, really take that responsibility heavily to not allow this out. The only two ways Well, three, in fact, the data can get out of the system is if the NRD chooses to release the data, the producer chooses to release the data, or court orders us to release the data. Those are the only three ways we can actually share this information with any. So it makes it really hard to develop when you're trying to deal with stakeholders and stuff like that, but this is the world we live in, and so that's what we want to do to make that right. So you log in here, this interface then takes you to your own farm and shows you kind of what you have as a way of tracks, your reported corn yield, and please, this is like fake data in here I put in of my own place. This is not real. I'm just putting example data in so everybody can see it, just for these kind of purposes to show this thing on. I only have a really tiny little irrigated farm out here in the Panhandle, Nebraska of my ranch that's a lot larger that's not irrigated, but this is a portion that is a little portion that's going to be used for sheep grazing. But I put in corn yields instead just to kind of give a demonstration of this. In this main page, you would see up here your username, you'd see a message bell. We also incorporated messages into the system. So that way an NRD can send you or send the producer a message from hydro data to the user. So say there was a board meeting going on a certain night and the district would like you to know about it. They can send you that message. Right now, it's a one-way communication from the NRD to the producer. It's not producer back to the NRD. That's been talked about, but we just started simple NRD to producer kind of thing. You can do a message at a district level. You can do a message at a sub-area level, a phased area level, or a individual user. So we can do 4 different style of messages into this thing. It would pop up down here and you'd have the message bell saying, hey, you have a message, kind of thing. There's stuff in here, just, typical stuff for profile, right? Your username, address. We can allow, and we have all these settings in hydro data that there's ways to allow and not allow this update. Some NRDs don't want to allow the producers to update this personal information if they choose not to. Some NRDs do, some NRDs, it depends on the NRD. We just don't ask questions, we just give them the options. And so update their user profile, address, home phone, business phone, mobile phone, and they can update their password. We do all our password updates through Amazon Web Services update system. So they basically, if they forget their password, they can go through a forget password system. That way the NRDs don't have to interact with, hundreds of users dealing with password forgets, which I'm sure are pretty significant over time, kind of thing. So these maps are all zoomable, so you can see the maps. All this spatial data is tracked in hydro data. And so this is all kind of just shown here. The producers cannot edit this data here. This is housed at the district level, and they edit the data at that time, at least on the track side of things. I'll kind of go into time to tell you about where the user can input data, but that's not one. This would be kind of like a certification in Nebraska vernacular, where it's a certified irrigated groundwater acre or something like that. Weirdly enough, my farm is surface water only, so a hydrogeologist that only deals with surface water is fairly interesting, but that's okay. So this, again, these maps are scrollable. You can zoom in, you'll start seeing flow meters, start seeing wells, irrigation points, all the stuff that you would expect to see in a good system there. And so then you can also click and interact with this map. You can go to this track here. It'll take you to the tracks page, and then you'll see the track in here. So then you have to see overview, the irrigation type, total number of track, total sort of acres. Again, mine's very simple, being one system. This is a multi-feature polygon, so it can have multiple features in this. So you can see 2 different features, but it's still one track, at least the way we have it depicted here. In the tracks, you can see information, like I said, the name of the track. This is one actually, I met with a bunch of farmers and asked them what their opinions were of the thing. And one of their biggest overarching, I guess, feedbacks to us was that they wanted to be able to alias name everything, because they have their own vernacular for naming their own places. Makes sense to me. I do too. This is the name of that place right there, my corner pasture. And so they don't really care about what the ID is of the track. That's NRD vernacular. They care about this. But what we wanted to do was allow them to have this ability to put aliases on stuff so the NRD and them can talk the same language. Hey, I'm looking at the corner pasture track. Looks like, and then the NRD is like, okay, I can find that one. Track 4,000. Okay. Everybody knows what's going on. So it was a really highly valuable piece of information to allow this. So we allowed alias names on tracks, wells, flow meters, and irrigation points. So they have all that ability to say, what is my alias name? This is also the area where we deal with water quantity. Out in the western part of the state, we deal with a lot heavier water quantity issues. And so this one tells you your usage on this parcel that you have over time. And so this is just your uses in acre inches that we put on here with a nice kind of little interactive graph. Just pops up a little information about how much you put on acre inches and acre inches per acre, does the calculation for you right here. And so this kind of gives you a usage. This will likely get beefed up over time, especially with the districts that have allocations or limits on pumping. They'll likely put something on here that would be like a gas gauge of, you know, how much full or empty are you on the allocation to help you understand. There's a lot of NRDs that do allocation periods over 3 to 5 years, and so kind of help producers understand where they're at with this. We've also incorporated this piece right here, and I might have Jennifer pop back in and talk about this. This is an NRCS report, and these reports are used for, Jennifer, can you please help me with the report? I can't remember it. They're used for like nitrogen reporting for EQIP or.
Yep, so for any producer that signs up through EQIP for a nutrient management practice, there's certain reporting requirements that they have to submit to get their payment on that practice. So that NRCS report will generate to fulfill those requirements for them to get their payment through NRCS on their EQIP practices.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Yep.
So yeah, we added this in as a report so the farmer can click this button. And they would see a report pop up. And they haven't given us all of the full details yet, but it kind of just put on standard information that the NRCS needs. And they can hand that to NRCS and hey, they have all the data and they don't have to do anything. So it's a really nice reporting utility for the producer for those programs. Okay, so then we move on to the sub tabs over here on the left. Well is another tab because the producer has a lot of well information on here. Looks like my internet's a bit slow. Showing the location of the well. The well will be highlighted if you're select that one. If I had multiple wells, one would be white, this would be yellow. So you can kind of see which one you're looking at on the map. It really is just a read-only page because there's really not much they can do with wells. If, however, they have a monitoring, if it's a monitoring well, like say it's a production well that the district goes out and reads water levels on or takes water quality points, this will, and this is kind of coming as a new feature, is going to be presented below as a nice graph showing water levels over time, because it's nice, really nice when landowners allow us to or allow the NRDs to go out and collect water level measurements or water quality data and that kind of stuff out there. So we really want to give the producer a tool to allow them to see that information that's collected. It would only be available to that producer that's on their farm. It wouldn't be anything else besides that. But then you click on the left and you have a slide out tray that would show you kind of information about the irrigated well, what kind of subarea it is, if it has an alias name, you know, DNR ID, legal description, if it's monitored, all that kind of stuff. This one here, if I would actually put a real DNR ID, I would click on this button, it would actually take me to the DNR page that this well was registered under, so you could see information about the well and what it was about. So that kind of gives just another utility for a producer to be able to click on there and see, okay, here's how my well was drilled, here's the information, here's the pump was set, here's all the information that was about. So just kind of nice utilities for a producer, but it's pretty much a read-only page except for the alias button where they can add in the alias name. Right. So. Then we get to flow meters, and this is where you'll see a little bit more interaction with the producer. Again, it's more water usage information, kind of like the tracks, only it's at the flow meters read. So we don't do the division to get it to acre inches per acre of irrigation. We do this more of whatever the meter was read at, of how many acre inches it was read. So basically, here's the date. Here's all the readings in acre inches. And then here is the usage calculations that the program does based on how many acre inches you pump from what the reading was over here. So, and then up here, whoops, again, all the maps are interactive, plus, minus, and zoom in and out. Right here is the alias term. Again, you can get the alias name for the flow meter. And here is kind of one of the first interactions where if an NRD allows, and this thing, again, these are all options. If the NRD wants to let them put data in, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. We just want to give them all options to be able to handle this. They can add a reading in. they would put their reading in there, you know, like that. They would put the date in and then put a note. And from here, they can upload a picture. I forgot to mention earlier, we also have an iOS and Android apps for this as well. So this is on any kind of system that we can think of to try to get them to be able to use the system. But also makes it difficult because we have to develop 3 different apps to be able to do the same thing. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to do it, but if it was on the mobile system, they would basically take picture, you hit that button, it would take you to your camera, it would be all over the flow mirror, you hit the picture button, it would then upload in here and it would push it to the database. With it. So that's what we can do there with that flow meter reading, and it would just go in the list of readings down here for that flow. So that's one of the few that they can, or that one of the places they can enter in data. Chemigation is the next piece of this. This is for the folks that don't know chemigation, the way we define it here for the NRDs, or basically it's an injection unit that goes within the line of a after the pump, after the well, before it goes in the pivot or other irrigation system, where they can inject things like nitrogen, they can inject herbicides, pesticides, things like that, and apply it through a pivot. So we'll call it fertigation if it's just fertilizers, but it's chemigation because they can do pesticides and herbicides through it as well. And so, again, this is right now a read-only page, kind of showing, holy cow, that was a bad one. I didn't even see that one there before. See if I crash the whole system. No, let's go back to communication. I don't know where this one came from. I didn't put that one in there. Must be a copy. I'll have to delete it. This one here we're looking at, again, I'm not sure where that one came from. This one here is a read-only. They can put an alias name under that thing. It's really just a read-only page. They can see if they have a permit issued to them and all that information. This page will likely also get beefed up in the future. A lot of NRDs would like the producers to be able to log in directly and apply for the fumigation permit right here. And even pay for it through the app as well. And so kind of do one-stop shop to do everything with fumigation permits in this, mainly because the NRDs are getting drowned out with paperwork, paperwork. And so they would rather have it all digital in this frame. And so that's going to be a future upgrade that's going to come relatively soon. A lot of NRDs are pushing for this just to get rid of all the paperwork and unnecessary information there, where this is a fairly simple thing where you're just applying for a fumigation permit and doing it through this. Again, read only for the most part, except for the alias name. So the next one here is a soil sample. These are our soil sample points. I fight with my brother about this all the time, but I think it looks like a hamburger with a shovel in it. I don't know what you guys think, if that seems about right. It could be a sandwich with a shovel, I'm not sure. You know, I give him crap all the time because we had a cat in a bag. It looked like a kitty cat inside of a plastic bag that was supposed to be a soil sample. This is now another one that looks like a shovel inside of a hamburger. So I'm not sure. That's my opinion, but everybody gets this crap about it, which makes it fun. So, but you can select which soil sample points that you would have. These are just 2 different ones. Again, this is all just fake data that we're just adding in to demonstrate how it would work with it. There's 2 different spots where the producer can add in. Well, I guess let me talk about it first. Up on top, you kind of get your heads up information of residual NPK, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and see what kind of the trend lines are, just as a quick hits for that. And then you can kind of go down below, and we have basically a bigger graph here showing just nitrate and organic matter, just so they can kind of see some trends through time. What's happening with their system? What does it look like? You know, do they see, if they're seeing nitrogens creep up over time, that might mean they're having some issues where they're over applying nitrogen. So trying to help them just understand the system as we go. Over here, you'll find information about each soil sample. And if you click on one of these, the producer will be able to have a slide out bar, be able to see when the sample was taken, who took it, if it was a composite sample, the depths of each sample, and all the information added in about the soil sample for layer 1, a layer 2, and layer 3 in this case. We have 3 different layers in this one. So you can kind of see a whole bunch of different information about soil samples here. One thing a producer can do, and this is one of the few spatial components that they can add in data, is right here, add a sample location, where you could do this and it would pop up a modal or a wizard, whatever you want to call it. Can you guys see the modal? Okay. So this is where you can put in soil sample new location, like location 2, put notes in there. You can tell us it's irrigated, and then on the map, you can say, okay, I took this soil sample right here. And so it pops in a new soil sample, and that gives you, then you save that, and then you have yet another soil sample location that you put in there. I don't want to clog this all up, so I'm not going to save this one. But that's what you can do with that. So that's one area we can add in spatial locations of soil samples. Because NRDs typically, I guess the best I understood is between 40 and 80 acre samples is what they kind of typically have the producers do if they're if they're in a phased area. I think there's probably different ones that depend on the NRD, but that's what I've heard the most out there. I'm sure there's other ones that I don't know of that are different. But so they'll need to put in, so if this pivot here was all part of my ground, this is a good 100 acres, they probably need, 2 or 3 samples within this to kind of get a good feel for what's happening in their soil area. And then the other area where a producer can add in data is this add button here. And this pops up yet another modal. I'm selected this soil sample location. I would say next. And then you go through all the stuff like your lab name, if it's Ward's lab, that kind of thing, putting notes in here when your sample was taken, what was the date on the lab report. And then this is information about it, how many acres are represented, the soil texture. And then here is where you can basically have up to 3 horizons of samples. You can do a composite sample as well, where you can only do one sample, 0 to 36 inches, or you can have a composite at the same location, or you can have multiple layers where you can put in 0 to 8, 8 to 24, 24 to 36. That's kind of what the typical soil sampling techniques out there are, those 3, or just a whole complete sample depth location of the entire 0 to 36 sample. You get a bit more information when you do different sample horizons. The upper sample, you should look at nitrates and other materials, whereas and organic matter, whereas lower samples, you're going to look more for just nitrates to see if they're escaping the red zones. You would go next. Some of these fields are required, some of them are not required. The ones we did require are nitrates and organic matter. And the organic matter was interesting because that was actually a farmer that told me that they wanted organic matter being a required field because it goes into the calculation of the nitrate recommendation from the University of Nebraska Lincoln. And so we needed to have that organic matter piece in there. And so you put in nitrates and then you put in organic matter, something like that. Then you go next layer. And then after layer 1, typically most people don't fill this out anyway, but if they want to, they can just for their own records. But these are the only 2 required fields. And then you get to the next layer. The only one required at that point is nitrogen or nitrates, I should say, there. And then you get to the summary. And here's where you can upload your actual soil sample, scanned sample document or picture of the sample document. So that can be stored in here for the NRD to look at and check. And you'd submit the sample. So yeah, that's kind of the soil piece of it, how they would enter soil data. Again, this is all per NRD. So some NRDs have different management levels. Some NRDs require some soil samples. Some NRDs require crops of management. Some NRDs only require flow meters. So we wanted to make this a kind of a universal thing that you could kind of do whatever you needed to without being one big thing, where they had to enter everything in one big form. We wanted to kind of try to parse it out between all of them. And then the final one here is a crops of management report or section here showing then the crop history on this particular farm and management history, if you will. Total acres, how many sprinkler acres are on there? Mine is not irrigated by sprinkler, so it's not sprinkler. And total corn yield, again, fake data here. But yet another spot where they can add in data, pops up yet another modal where we can then give information about what crop they had. And some of this is required in the phased area and stuff where they're in a high nitrate phase area, they'll need to enter this information in. That goes into here and says, okay, how many of these are sprinkler acres? How many of these are other irrigated type acres? Mine's 100% other irrigated type. Here's where you get to the irrigation water applied. And, I always wanted to bring in the data from what was in the flow meter read into this farm. And that's a great idea until you start thinking about farmers parse these fields up into multiple crops. So how do you know how much went on the corn acres? Well, hopefully the farmer knows, but we really don't have a way to understand how much of this was farm was application. So if it was corn and soybeans, say 50-50, how much was put on the corn versus how much put on the soybeans? Out here in the Panhandle, we see up to 4 crops grown on each farm. It could be sugar beets, corn, winter wheat, and dry beets. And so how much was put on each one becomes a real big issue. Where we can do a whole bunch of assumptions and say, okay, it was 50-50 corn and soybeans, we can put 50% of the water usage in here and pre-populate it. But the problem is we just don't know if that's true or not. Is that right or wrong assumption? So we leave it blank for now. We're going to have this discussion because this is becoming an issue. But you can put in your water applied in your, say it was 12 inches. And then this is where you would do your water nitrate calculations, where say you had 5 parts per million in your water nitrate. That would mean if I put on 12 inches, I would actually putting, and I'm using the UNL nitrate card, by the way. I'd be actually putting on 14 pounds of nitrogen by just pumping groundwater out and applying it to the system. And so that's when we do that calculation to be able to say, go from inches of water applied with what your water nitrate is, and then you get to that amount extra nitrogen you're applying to the system. In here is tillage practices. Right now we have it no-till, minimum till, conventional tillage. We had a meeting with NRCS folks last week, and they really kind of had some different ideas on how to do that. We really kind of liked it, so we're going to modify this to be, what did they call it, Jennifer? It was reduced till, no-till, and strip till, and conventional till. They had 4 different categories that they wanted to bring in with different levels of basically residue that's on top of the field left over. So that's kind of, this is our first cut. So we kind of like that new convention. So we're going to go with that and change all these. It's just these are just simple changes in the database that we can just make to be different pieces of information. This is not required, but if they want to put it in there, they can. I do no-till, it's faster, but that's okay. And then in here is where you have nitrogen applied on this 5.6 acres. I said it was corn. You have as many nitrogen application events as you want. The date of the event, emergent time, pre and post emergent, the type of nitrogen. This is a 3200 nitrogen, the amount, say you put on 50 pounds, 50 pounds an acre, and say it was pre-emergence, and say you put it on in, let's say we put it on April 50. Kind of thing. That's the kind of data you would enter in here. And then if you did multiple applications through, say, irrigation or fertigation for your pivots, you would put it in here and have all of the dates added in to this here. So that's just ways of adding these events and to be able to start tracking how much nitrogen you applied and see what your true balance is in the system and see how much you actually did, did. Manure is a big thing, especially for, livestock manure out of feedlots and, chicken, I think called chicken litter, coming on the farms and things like that, where you'll put in information about manure applications. We have a whole bunch of different ways you can bring this in, open lot, solid manure. These are all kind of taken basically from the UNL NEB guides to help us understand kind of how that was put on, what kind of manure, the nitrogen amount, that would have to be a tested amount of pounds per ton, organic nitrogen amounts, how much of that is in there based on your tests, the year applied, the application method, the amount, and then the date applied. The year applied becomes important because manure, as it decays over time, brings nitrogen into the system. Brings nitrogen into the system, and is a lag effect. It means it takes longer to the first year you get like 50% of the nitrogen out of the manure. Next year it's like 20%. The next year it's like 20%, and the final year it's like 10%. So you kind of have this lag effect of manure application where you get nitrogen into the system over time. So we need to have some sort of known year that you applied it. This year, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So we know that you apply this to it, so we can account for that lag effect of manure coming in and converting into usable nitrogen for the plants. The next one is a nitrogen inhibitor. I know there's been a lot of talk about nitrogen inhibitors out there for with ag producers and when they apply fertilizer. And so this is just to help them understand and put in inhibitors. And we're actually going to change this around based on some feedback we got last week. We're going to actually add this into nitrogen applied because it typically is done at the nitrogen manufacturers level, where they basically add an inhibitor in here at this time here when they apply the nitrogen. They either do it or they don't. And so we're going to store that in this level right here in the nitrogen applied. So but it is basically going to it's going to basically be the date, the type, And then just acres treated. I think we're gonna get rid of these other two here because they're kind of irrelevant for what we understand now. But we want to have nitrogen inhibitors in here because that's becoming a bigger and bigger deal for preventing nitrogen from leaching out and staying in the soil for long for the plants to take it up. And then finally, we get to upload the application inhibitor documents where you can upload all the documents that you had from your nitrogen. Say you had receipts from the co-op, you upload that here, and if you put inhibitors on there, upload that documents here for basically proof that you did what you said. Okay. I think we're down to almost the last tab, so bear with me. Last tab here is the nitrates tab. I think we're going to rename this the nitrogen management tab. But this kind of gives you the understanding then of, what your application rate has been in the past. And then this, Jennifer was talking about nitrogen efficiency or nitrogen use efficiency. This area here kind of helps people understand how efficient they are in either a bushels per pound. So bushels of corn per pounds of nitrogen, or pounds of nitrogen per bushels of corn. And we have now, people like to see it both ways. So we're going to actually put a little switch up here to switch it from one to the other. And that kind of helps you understand that information, the quick hits on top. And then here is the UNL, calculation of recommended nitrogen application. Right here, you would say, okay, here's how much from the soil test. Here's how much nitrogen I have in my soil based on the soil tests. I have those fake soil test data I have in my soil. Got about 58 pounds of soil in the ground. You have 52.5 pounds of organic matter nitrogen from the organic matter I had in my parcel. You have like alfalfa or dry beans or soybeans or some legume out there that's putting nitrogen into the ground. You get a credit from that. It's usually pretty small, but you do get a credit. And then if you had an irrigation water to apply, here's the credit for the irrigation water that you would apply on there to give you kind of a total credits I have in my soil, in my system, around 114 pounds an acre. You would then get, and then we also, if you guys remembered in the crop management report, we had a yield goal in there we entered in, 250 bushel per acre corn yield goal, and that is calculated to be 335 pounds per acre by taking basically it's UNL calculation, 1.2 times your bushel per acre goal plus 35, and that gives you this number right here, the amount of pounds required per acre. And then this last one here is basically taking this, the required minus what you have in your system to help the producer understand you really only need to apply 221 pounds an acre. You don't need to apply the 335 pounds an acre. This is all you need to apply because you have enough pounds in your soil already to make up some of it. So only apply this as a recommendation. And then on the bottom, we kind of gave a little bit of a very simple economic analysis tool. We said, okay, what's the price of nitrogen per ton? And so here's what the yield goal nitrogen is per acre, $56.62 per acre. Whereas if you went with the recommended yield goal, you'd only have the cost of $37.37 an acre. So you can save some money by going with our recommended nitrogen applications. Instead of just going with what you've always done here, if you've never taken soil samples or whatnot, you can actually save some money by doing this method as well. Here, and then we have a total tract cost of how much it would cost for the total tract. If you went with my parcel small, you went with the about 317 bucks if you went for the yield goal nitrogen versus 200 bucks. So you'd save, over my little parcel, 115 bucks on that over, 110 bucks on that over, the amount of money you would save. So that kind of rounds all the data gathering out. Some NRDs will use this, some NRDs won't. Producers can use it if they want to use this. If they're not required, there's no restrictions on that. But if they want to use it, they can, and they can enter all their data in here just for their own records if they want to. I'm not sure how much that we're going to get. Usually people do that only when they're required to do it, but you might have some that do that kind of thing in here. So that kind of fills out and kind of finishes out the whole story of kind of the recommendation of the nitrogen. So last buttons I guess I'll talk about is one thing we did in here. I'm a developer, so I see NRD, so I can switch amongst NRDs. But if an NRD personnel is dealing with the producer, and the producer says, hey, I can't do this, something's going wrong, I can't see the data, I don't know what I'm entering, they can become any user of their NRD, and they can see exactly the same thing that producer is seeing at the time they're seeing it, to help them through that. So that was one thing that we did right here, was allow a district personnel or a crop consultant. So you can also have crop consultants assigned to multiple users. So they would come in here and say, okay, I'm entering data for Thad Koontz today. I'll just become Thad Koontz right here. And then they'll just see my information. They'll enter all the data that they've gathered for me. And we track then who is entering the data. So with the crop consultant entering it, we know it's them entering it. If it's the producer entering it, we know it's the producer or the farmer or the landowner entering the data. Because we want to know, is the crop consultant doing all the work and the producer's not even understanding or trying to think through this stuff, or is the producer entering it and truly trying to understand this? So we kind of want to have that information so we can better gauge education, you know, to those producers to say, hey, you should be looking at your data, and if it's all the crop consultant doing it, to help them understand why they're doing what they're doing. The last thing I'll talk about here is we have on the bottom also a help button. And this is when you can go in here and ask questions, you know, entering a flow meter reading. Oops. And this will actually pop up. I want to know about a flow meter reading. And this gives you an interactive explanation of how to enter a flow meter read. Right here, you go through a bunch of different steps, you get started, and then it'll kind of give you these steps. You can make this larger too, but this is just kind of the small pop-up saying, okay, the first step is go to flow meter. Next step is go add reading. Next step is put the reading in. Next step is put your date in, any notes, and then upload your picture. It just kind of walk you through step by step. I'm sure that's pretty small on your screen, but step by step of how this works within that. So that's basically our help desk within that. Or if they even have more problems, they can contact technical support, which will be us if they're having a bug. And if it's just data, we'll likely push that out to the NRDs to help them because it'll be an NRD question instead. Some interesting statistics. If everybody signs up that are within our system, not every NRD is within hydrodata in Nebraska. We have 18 NRDs that are involved out of the 23. But it's something, if every producer and landowner and operator would sign up, it's something around 67,000 users we would have on the system over time. I highly doubt we'll get all those people to sign up, but we might get a good, you know, quarter of them or half, hopefully. And then on top of that, we manage something on over 35,000 flow meter readings in this thing as well for water usage. So it's kind of an interesting how much data actually is in the state of Nebraska to be able to deal with this kind of information. And that's just in Nebraska. So it's kind of interesting to see that. But I think that is a pretty long, hefty tour. Hopefully you guys didn't get too bored with this one. I went through everyone, but that's the tour Producer Connect within the scope. So are there any questions or thoughts or comments or?
Thank you guys, and we'll open it up to questions now. I'm in hydrology, so I have lots of questions if there are none for people. But I'll go ahead and start. So, yeah, maybe this is for Jennifer. So you said this is all a voluntary program, but only certain NRDs participate. I guess how does that decision making going between who has to participate, or I guess could you explain that a little bit more?
Yep, so 17 of the 23 districts have decided to join in on this project. There was basically, we received a water sustainability fund to fund the project, and then we needed match to go along with that. So we've secured match in a number of ways. Each district that wanted to participate had to pay to help with the development costs and put towards that match for the grant. So it's not required to use statewide, but if they join, they'll be using it in their phase 2 and higher management areas, and they'll use it to collect that crop reporting information and collect that information and provide that recommendation out. So not everyone has to use it, and not all producers within a district will have to use it, but if you are in that phase 2 or higher reporting area, the districts, that's going to be how you submit that crop report form. And that is a requirement then. So if a producer would choose not to submit their crop report form, the districts do have the authority essentially to to take legal action and issue cease and desist orders for them in their operations. So we don't typically do that. Most people are, a majority of the people are willing to work with us and do what's required. And it actually makes it easier for them, because if not, they would have to be filling this out in a paper format and going into the NRD office to do it. So it actually helps save them time submitting that information.
And sometimes NRDs, even in the rules and regs, they have a form that they say you fill out this form. So now having a new tool, they actually have to change their rules and regs to say you can either use the form or you have to use Producer Connect, or you can use Producer Connect. So you get kind of into these, like they had a rules and reg idea here, and then a new tool comes out and they have to react to that within their rules and regs. So that's something that they have to tackle over time. I've heard several NRDs talk about that.
Thank you. Another question I have is, so you said you could share this data, with researchers. Do you guys provide aggregated data at all to the public? Or I know you said it was, pretty closed, but I guess I'm just wondering kind of what is the role, is there a role for the universities, to work with this or use some of the data, as we incorporate this in our research? I guess how would you, what kind of role could the universities play in this kind of database?
So this data is secure by the district. So as you can see, Thad was helping today on this. So since I'm with the association, I'm not actually with one of the NRDs. And so I don't even have access to this data as we help develop this tool. So the data is secure. The data is strictly with the NRDs with that agreement. If the NRDs want to provide an aggregate report out, they can do that. That's one of the things that we're kind of working on, is what could an aggregate report look like. But the data is 100% secure. We don't share producer data with anyone. And there's a trust level there that we don't want to break with our producers. And so we're very, very respectful of that. I don't know if you want to touch on anything else with the data security piece of it.
Right, yeah. So again, kind of going back to my original discussion, it really comes down to the NRD and their choice and what their board wants to do for sharing the data. We've had huge amounts of feedback from our side that you will not share this data unless we're the ones sharing it, or unless the producer is willing to share it. And so as a company, I guess I am respecting my clients' wishes, and honestly, it's good practice for that kind of thing. Unfortunately, I can't really do much about it besides it has to be the NRD sharing or a producer sharing, or like I said, by a court order. Those are my only three options I have to share data. And everybody, a lot of these districts really find this to be personal, private information of these producers, and what they use, what they put on for fertilizers, what they put on for water, all that kind of stuff. And so, unfortunately, it's that way. Not saying that can't change in the future, but that's just the way we're sitting right now. It's not available unless NRD allows it.
And it's data that we've been collecting for years, and we've never shared it without approval from the producer. So this isn't new data that we will be collecting. We've been collecting this information for a number of years already. It's just we'll be collecting it in a different way, but with data security is very important to us.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I had a question about, you had just said that this was data that the NRDs have been collecting, and that I was curious, are producers requesting to have access to data that you would like to integrate with this, right? Because I can see you've got soil, you've got crops, you've got flow meters. It's a lot about how they manage their operations. And I was curious if any of the producers have requested, like, hey, it'd be really great if we could, also have access to like weather data, or, ooh, it'd be really nice if I could have access to, something else that's relevant, commodity board prices. I mean, whatever, because this is very self-contained. And if you get producers starting to use it, I'm wondering if they're requesting, hey, access to data from other sources that they could then, at least view within the same platform.
Yep, so we haven't actually rolled this out to the public yet for use. So when we do, there will be a lot of surveys and evaluation that first year to collect some of that feedback to see, you know, areas that we can maybe improve upon or new features and enhancements that we can expand upon for future development. So we suspect that that might be some of the feedback that we get. We just haven't hit that phase, I guess, of implementation yet to know what that feedback's gonna be.
Okay, okay,
Legally,
and
we wanted to add in mesonet stations from around the state to be able to help with,
yeah,
you know,
right,
your soil moisture
exactly.
profile and what your nearest weather station is telling you is happening in conditions, and then do the ET counts, you know, on crops, you know, to help them understand kind of water scheduling. And that's gonna be, I have a feeling, in the water use realm, like I was saying, is this tracks page here will likely expand and deal with water use in a different way, where we're gonna show ET compared to your water
Mhm.
use, what was total ET for the year, how'd your water use do? There's things like that are gonna happen, and we've already been talking about them. It just we wanted to walk before we crawl, or walk before we run, as the good
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
Kind of, so those things are coming for sure.
Gotcha. And then I was curious about, you know, the use of this, that producers, like they can connect with their crop consultants. But then could they also connect it with, like their ag retailers? Right, because I know that, or their insurance agents, right? They might want to allow certain people to have access. You know, is that, you know, a future option that, okay, if a producer like wants to give access to their insurance agent, could they do that?
Good question. I don't know. I've never been asked that one before. So, you know, if they want to share the information, it's up to them to share it. If they want to share it, you know, as the user themselves.
Uh-huh.
But
We're
I don't
probably
know.
gonna be pretty cautious of how many people we actually allow to start accessing and looking at other people's data. I know right now we do have crop consultants that fill out those crop report forms for producers. And so that was one of the requests we got from one of our stakeholders that's participating in this. And so we did incorporate that, but I guess
Yeah.
I would proceed with caution there, just knowing that
Mhm.
the more access people have, the easier it is for data to
Right.
become insecure.
Yeah, right,
They can
yeah,
share their password username if they want, but I don't recommend that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, please don't, but I know
Right.
some of you might do this anyways, but please don't.
Yeah, we can't stop them if they share their own. Now, that will only be their own information, nobody else's. They can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the nice thing is this allows them to, I mean, this allows that all of their data is in one spot, so it would be easy to generate a report and print it off and share it that way. So it does make it a lot easier if a producer wants to share their information, they have it all here. But again, that would be up to them to make that decision but not actually access the platform.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, no, thank you. That was very helpful.
I did have a question about the soil sampling. So you mentioned that they only take 1 point per 40 or 80 acres. I guess what is that in respect to? Is that just for getting the soil nitrogen or nitrate level for that UNL calculator? Or I guess I've always heard people sampling like, you know, 2.5 or 5 acre grids. So
Right, if you're gonna do grid sampling, that's 2.5 or 5 acre grids, right? So, but for NRD rules and regulations on reporting nitrogen in the soil, it's typically somewhere like a 40 or 80 acre sample or something like that. So that's for reporting and trying to understand that. Now, for their own usage, they can do whatever they want. Though I was told by the what's that one co-op, Jennifer, we had a meeting with last week or on Friday. What was it? From Central Valley Ag. He said that 2.5 acre samples are really only used for kind of phosphorus and potassium and not for nitrogen. They don't actually do nitrogen. They do phosphorus, potassium, and organic matter. They don't actually do those on that kind of scale. They kind of go to the bigger NRD requirement scale for nitrogen management. So, but anyway, the 40 or 80 acre scale or something like that, whatever the NRD rule says, that's an NRD rule just to get a handle on what's happening with nitrates in a particular area of concern.
And that's the minimum requirement for the NRD. most producers are probably sampling more than that, depending on how, you know, they manage their operation, but those are just kind of some minimum requirements for the districts.
Gotcha. Just a quick plug. So I'm working with the NRCS on making a soil sampling design application with them. So there'll be I don't know if that's of interest or an API plugin for this, but it will tell you like, okay, if you have 20 samples you want to take, where's the best locations to take that within a unit area? And then you could, get the soil information and report it back to this, and then they can have that more readily available for those dense grids. So, I mean, if that's something of interest down the road that you want that plug in to that NRCS tool, or we're working on a NEB guide as well for that at some point in the near future, but happy to connect with you guys on that for better optimized sampling of soils and all that kind of stuff. So
basically, it gives you a recommendation on, based on your soil type and slope and whatnot of the soils of, and perk and deep and, connectivity of the soil, and how much to sample. Is that what you said?
yeah, so there's 5 options. We have the grid sampling option at different resolutions. We have it based off of soil zones and how many points you pick. Then we have the SEMA 221 option. There's 2 different ones for that NRCS. And then if you do like geophysical mapping and you want to base it off of the geophysical layer, you can do that. So we have all 5 options. 3 of them are working now. We're still working on a couple of them, but that'll be a ESRI USDA NRCS tool at some point in the very near future. So that I can send you guys the beta website if you want to play around with that. So happy
Yes,
to
please.
follow up.
We're always interested in adding good tools here to this thing. So, and if it has an API access, to be able to get to that, that would be awesome. To be able to incorporate something similar like that, give a recommendation on where to take sampling.
Yep. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'll follow up with an email and just pass on that link. So
Thank you.
any other questions? I guess Jennifer, for the last
Nope.
people standing here. So
That was fantastic.
yeah,
Thank you guys so
appreciate
much.
it.
Yeah,
That was
thank you for
awesome.
the opportunity.
For having us.
Oh, sure.
Great.
Is this a fairly, like, what is this group, I guess, kind of had a plug early on in the discussion. What is, if I could ask a question back to you guys, what's your overarching goal? I guess you go through the overarching, you said it, I think earlier, and I kind of now need to understand it a bit better. What is the overarching group?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do